Garen Emig, along with Bill Haisten, here to load up on football, something that we promised that we would do a week ago. After watching spring practices on Saturday, Bill, you were in Stillwater, I was in Norman. We can deliver on that promise now, having watched the Cowboys and Sooners. Not that we wanted to get anyone's hopes up that we were going to see anything decisive. It's kind of how these things go, but there had to be a few things that caught your eye over at Boone Pickens Stadium, so lay it on me.
Well, I mean, coming out of it, both games really, Garen, I mean, there's got to be a little bit of security knowing that you have apparently number 2 quarterbacks at each school that can, if not match what you get from Rattler and from Sanders,
right?
Certainly can at least move the chains and keep you in a ball game. Shane Illingworth at OSU. Here's the deal with Shane. He lacks athleticism. He lacks the kind of athleticism to extend a play or to ad lib and get some yards on his own. But when the protection is solid, as he showed again the other day, he has real arm talent.
Right.
And the truth is with Sanders, he was so-so through the first, I'd say his first 4 possessions, but toward the end of the game, they began, you remember, Garen, in the bowl game, they attacked in a real up-tempo manner right out of the gate. And he really flourished, and he was really good all night. And so they went back to that later in the spring game to more of a tempo attack. And Sanders, for whatever reason, really, really functions at a higher level when they go at a faster pace. And he looked really, his last possession, he was either 7 of 8 passing or 6 of 7, ran him right down the field and ran him right in the end zone. So with regard to the quarterbacks, I thought both of the top 2 guys at OSU had a pretty good day. They have a running back transfer from Utah State, number 22, Jalen Warren, who in my mind, as we speak, probably is the number 2 back in the program behind LD Brown. And that's a mouthful considering that Dominic Richardson both had 100-yard performances last year. I'm just telling you, Warren reminds me a little bit, and not just because he's built like Kendall Hunter, but he's reminiscent of Kendall Hunter. He's a smaller back and he's a load at 215 and 5. So defensively, it was pretty much what you expected. I believe if there hadn't been so many quick whistles that the defense would have gotten, that the frontline defensive guys who were on the field would have gotten 20 sacks. The pressure was consistent. You got a good look at what I think will be certainly a bigger, if not truly big season for Brennan Presley, who was targeted quite a bit, both on Zoom sweeps and throwing it downfield, and he made plays. Tay Martin is a target that they can trust. The freshman from Norman High School at OSU, that kid is going to be a heck of a player now, and made a catch on the edge of the end zone. That was a thing of beauty. So, for the most part, uneventful, like I say, quick whistles. A couple of guys did get blown up, but for the most part, it wasn't certainly at the level of physicality you see on Saturdays in the fall. It wasn't real football, but it was kind of like football.
Yeah, right.
So I just thought it was a good day for. Oh, and they lined up and kicked 6 out of 7 field goals with backup kickers because Alex Hale, who was hurt in Bedlam, the Bedlam pregame actually, still is not available. So on the whole, Mike Gundy was fired up because there weren't very many penalties and nobody got hurt. So, that really is Gundy's number 1 emphasis. And we got to see Gunnar Gundy play quarterback for 3 possessions, which was interesting.
That was my favorite thing you wrote over the weekend, which I thought that was really cool.
The little his first throw, at least publicly viewed pass attempt as a college quarterback, was a Mahomes flip on the run, and he completed it for a short gain. So it was fun.
We won't see Gunnar throwing passes in a game anytime soon, I presume, unless something's gone wrong with Sanders and Illingworth. But that's a story that's going to be a lot of fun following, and it's a really neat piece of, if nothing else, right now, sentimentality. If you're Mike Gundy, It was interesting. There was a neat moment in Norman that had to do with a coach's son, and the fact that right after the OU scrimmage ended, Lincoln Riley huddled everyone together, was saying something indecipherable from us in the press box. We couldn't hear what was going on down on the field, of course. And then all of a sudden you see this mad mob scene as one of the players is surrounded, and immediately your mind jumps to someone got a scholarship.
Right.
Because that's the kind of reaction you get when a coach awards a scholarship in front of the team. And it was only after a minute and everyone started peeling off the guy that was getting dogpiled that we could see it was Drake Stoops, Bob's kid, who after 3 years as a walk-on receiver is now on scholarship at OU. And so again, that's the kind of thing you sort of look for. As you say, the football is, you get a semblance of football at these things anymore. You get a taste, but what you're really after are sort of sidebar moments of that intrigue you or that should intrigue a lot of followers of the program. And I thought that was sort of the moment in Norman. Otherwise, it was business as usual. Rattler was fine. Caleb Williams, the freshman backup, was better than fine. Right. Not that that's a shot given his pedigree and the 5 stars attached to his name. Receivers made a few plays. Another 5-star freshman, Mario Williams, had a 50-yard catch. Jaden Hazelwood had a one-handed catch on the sideline that was sort of the wow moment in terms of individual playmaking. But what I wrote about and what I focused on was defensive improvement. And again, you can only see so much when the Sooners were on the field, Bill. But did ask both Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch after the scrimmage if they felt better at the end of spring than they did at the beginning, just in terms of that defensive progress, because that's everything for Oklahoma.
It is.
In terms of playoff contention, right? That's the bar that has to be raised. And I know they're optimistic, but I also know that they need to see more of it next fall.
Yeah, no, it's justifiable. It's justifiable optimism on. I mean, I just keep hearkening back to the Kansas game of Kyler Murray's final season at OU, Gary.
Right.
And they let Kansas rush for more than 300 yards, and they let Kansas total 450 and whatever I forgot how many points they scored, but KU, that was a terrible Kansas team. I mean, a truly terrible Kansas team that really came in, and OU couldn't stop them all night. So the expectation after Coach Grinch came in was, I think the expectations were unreasonable with regard to how quick could he get it flipped. But considering where they were as recently as November of 2018, and to make the strides they've made over the last 2 seasons, I think they're right on course. And I don't think there's anything. I don't think they're slow in the development of that defense. I just think it takes time, and I think they're on the brink. I don't know necessarily that they're on the brink of greatness, but they're on the brink of being a reason why they'll win some games. There'll be some times when the defense will have to do something in the fourth quarter and ultimately be the reason why they win a game.
Yeah.
And they're at that point now. And so, no, I think OU very justifiably is a solid top 4 team going into the and probably number 2 going into the 2021 season. But no, Caleb Williams should give Lincoln Riley, Lincoln should sleep pretty good with regard to feeling like he has a guy behind. In fact, in the Lincoln, other than Kyler Murray, obviously, but Caleb Williams would probably be the guy you would trust most, even he just got here a few weeks ago, right? But you feel like you could trust him with probably an abbreviated playbook.
Yeah.
But he's so athletic and he just seems to have there's different kinds of swag. He seems to have the right kind of swag.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Which is just a super high level of confidence and ability. So
yeah.
I thought in that regard, the spring games were good because each of the backup quarterbacks in these funky formats with a split roster at Stillwater where you didn't even have the first unit offensive line together intact. They were all scattered. So
right.
You really don't know what you saw, except that I think Shane Illingworth is a little bit like Mac Jones. When the protection is good, he's going to make a play for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're off schedule a little bit, maybe not, which makes the NFL draft fascinating to me, because somebody's going to go way too high and pay way too much for Mac Jones, I'm afraid, this weekend. But no, it was fun. The weather was beautiful, and I was really happy to see Drake Stoops get a award. I don't care about, the fact that obviously money is not an issue
Right.
for the Stoops family, and it's not like one of those kinds of stories, but which are great when they happen, when a family really
Sure.
benefits from a scholarship. It's not like that, but this guy had 25 catches, I think, last season, and averaged 15 per. I mean, he's a player, he's a real player. And so I think he's, after 3 seasons in the program, it's a deserved scholarship, and good for Drake Stoops. He's a guy. I told you, Garrett, I saw him play high school basketball at Norman, and was blown away.
Yeah.
Blown away by his ferocity and his conditioning. And I don't think neither he nor Trae Young ever left the floor. And of course, I was blown away by Trae Young that night, but on a different level, just about as impressed with Drake Stoops. So he's a solid kid and a great kid in that program.
Any kid who puts himself through 3 years of college, big time college football, and that's a lot of blood, that's blood, sweat, and tears, man. That's out long hours, crazy sacrifice, and they get some perks. This is OU football. I'm not. Obviously, there's another side to it. There can be some nice things that come along with that. But I'm just saying the commitment to playing big time college football and the amount of pain and punishment that's inflicted at any position warrants a scholarship along the way. So
I stand corrected, Garen. He has 25 catches for his career. He had 15 last year and averaged 15 per touch. Yeah. So I mean, he is without question, he's a player, and maybe he'll have a heightened role this year. I mean, we'll see, but he's a good player. Yeah.
You mentioned Mac Jones a bit ago. That's a good reason to talk about the draft before we knock off for the week. Still Tevin Jenkins and Zaven Collins, right? Are we just about assured that their names are going to be called Thursday night?
I've seen too much fluctuation in the mock drafts to say it's an assurance.
Okay.
Really for either guy, but a couple of weeks ago, I remember reading that the Chiefs were really super high on Tevin Jenkins, and you saw the protection issues that the Chiefs had in the Super Bowl. So obviously that's a priority for Kansas City to get better up front. And 2 weeks ago, some insider wrote that it looked like Tevin Jenkins would be the likely guy taken by the Chiefs at the end of the first round. Well, then they signed Orlando Brown.
That's right.
So it looks like they've addressed that issue at tackle. So now what does that do for Jenkins? It just seems like he did well enough on his pro day, and there's enough positive buzz about him that he's probably going to be in the 24 to 30 area of that first round. Zaven, I guess, what has he done to hurt his draft stock? Nothing. So, I mean, presumably he's still a guy who would go somewhere in the final third of the first round. Beyond that those two guys seem to be the only state players.
Right.
So certainly with a shot at the first round. And it would be a great story in that, Zaven came out of Hominy and nobody knew really what he would become or really what position he would play even. And then, so what he did with his body, what he did to get better physically that first year out of high school was remarkable. And with regard to the first day of draft viewing, I mean, it's going to be interesting just to see the madness that happens in the top 8 picks or so, Garen. But then after that, from a local standpoint, you got Collins, who I guess has been projected to go as high as 15, but more likely in the 20s, he and Tevin Jenkins, which is interesting. I was at OSU's practice on the day that Tevin Jenkins and his family paid an unofficial visit to the OSU campus before his senior year at Topeka.
Mm-hmm.
You had told me that gangly
Yeah.
kid that day would be a first round, even a discussion guy for a first round pick. I would have doubted that pretty strongly, but chances are he will be. And you know, I mean, it's not like Russell Okung, who was, you remember, you and I covered the 2010 draft, which was loaded at the top remarkably with not only Big 12 guys, but OU guys and Oklahoma State guys. And Russell Okung was the 6th pick overall. And if you had told me his first day of practice at OSU in 06, I'd have said, I can buy that, because he was that beautiful of a big football athlete. Jenkins is a self-made man. Collins is a self-made man. And now they're about to be rich young men. So
every time I think of Jenkins in the draft, that story that Gundy's told, gosh, when was it? It might have even been preseason. It was early last season. And he told the story on Zoom of being in the weight room with Jenkins and asking him, you know how many guys, you know how many $3 or $4 million football players there are in this room right now? And, Jenkins, of course, shakes his head. Gundy says, yeah. You're talking about, and at that point, I'm like, really? I think everyone on the Zoom call is like, really? Mm-hmm. Tevin Jenkins, NFL prospect. You self-made is right. And that's what's great about both those stories. Jenkins and Collins are guys that really, by virtue of what they did last fall, one season, that's what's really catapulted them into some terrific places.
I do think too, Eric, I do think also, Garen, that it helps both guys that the NFL, if you ask different personnel people about what those guys are,
mm-hmm.
There's a flexibility with both guys with regard to where you play them, because Tevin has lined up at different positions on the offensive line, and Zaven has been projected as maybe a hand on the ground defensive end, or an interior linebacker, or even an outside linebacker, because he runs so unbelievably well. Yeah. So that versatility is a commodity you can they'll keep you in the league, or get you drafted higher than you would have been typically if you're just a one position guy. So yeah, we got 3 days of draft. This is here's a little trivia I was reminded of this morning. This is the 42nd year that the draft will have been televised. I never knew this, Garen, but the NFL owners wanted no part of televising the draft initially, no part of it. And Pete Rozelle kind of nudged the owners into agreeing to have it done. ESPN does the draft, and then the first televised first pick overall was Billy Sims, running back, University of Oklahoma. Yeah, that's so, we think of the draft as being just a staple of the TV sports calendar,
right?
And an unbelievable platform for the NFL.
Yeah,
here in the off season, and at the beginning in 1980, the owners wanted nothing to do with televising the draft, which I think is interesting. So
sure. Well, anything that the NFL doesn't blow up, or anything that the NFL used to not blow up, you wonder, because of just how much of a standout enterprise that is. How could you not have blown it up? And yet you're right. There was that time. Dave, real quick. Friday is second and third round. I can think of 3 names that come to mind from the two programs, 2 Big 12 programs. Tylan Wallace from OSU, Creed Humphrey, and Ronnie Perkins from OU. Am I missing someone in terms of day 2 guys?
No, unless
Chuba sneaks in, or you think that's a thing? I'm kind of thinking third day at this point for him.
Yeah, in fact, Chuba may drop to the 5th round. So no, definitely day 2 guys. Ronnie Perkins is, I would think, a very, very solid guy there. Tylan Wallace, you hear or I read on all these mock drafts and pro day write-ups coming out of personnel people. There's kind of a pretty significant fluctuation on what people think about Tylan. It has nothing to do with his hands or his game. It's everything to do with a concern about his knee. And,
Yeah.
And the history of you know, his family has a history of ACLs, not just him, his mom and his brother. And so I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think Ronnie Perkins is going to be, I don't know what to expect from Ronnie at the next level. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be a phenom. And then at the same time may just kind of be a quiet guy who maybe doesn't even stick to a roster. I don't know. He's a definite wild card in the draft, but he's, you know, his film suggests that at his best he's a difference maker. So that's why he's going to be a day 2 guy for sure.
As well as one guy I'm sort of partial to root for this year. That guy for me is Trey Brown, the kid from Union by way of OU, who probably that's a day 3 guy almost assuredly. Trey's you mentioned watching Drake Stoops in high school from Norman North. I met Trey Brown the week that Union played North. Was that in the state championship game that year or semifinals?
It was no, it was at Chapman Stadium. So yeah, it was a championship game.
Okay, yeah, I met Trey and asked him about the prospect of having to cover the son of the guy he was about to play football for. Right? Yeah, he'd already pledged to OU and he was opposite Bob's kid, and it couldn't have been more delightful. I loved everything he was about then. I've enjoyed. It's been Zooms mostly the last year or so. But every time he's on the other end of an interview, it's always interesting. And he lost his mom in an episode that got some attention in the last year. I believe it was been the last year. And again, some guys you get to know a little better than others. I wish we'd all knew these kids a little more, but COVID got in the way of that in the last year. But I'm hoping that he land wherever he lands, whenever it is, it's something that makes him happy. I'll just say that.
If he could play every game at AT&T Stadium and
that's right,
he'd be a first-round guy.
Dallas needs to draft him, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Hey, that same week that Norman North and Union played, I went to a Union practice and was on the field from behind watching a live period with Kirk Frederick and Trey Brown. I mean, when you're that close to it and you see his speed and how quickly he closes on the football and gets in the passing lane, it is breathtaking. So if you tell me that he ends up on special teams and rotating at corner for somebody for the next 8 years, I won't be a bit surprised. So good. I'm with you. I mean, you get to know these guys, even if you don't know them that well. You always hope that, you know, because you know, even 3 or 4 years in the league results in situation changing money, and in some cases family changing money. And so no, I'm rooting for all of them. I'd love, you know, and I guess I could go ahead and say this. I mean, it was just this big secret last year that Chuba Hubbard was coming off a pretty bad pelvic injury, which is just unimaginable. And that would hurt. I mean, but anyway, so, you know, if he is as healthy now as he says he is, you know, somebody might get an unbelievable bargain.
I know.
4th or 5th round, because you and I both saw him in 19 was, well, 2,000 yards speaks for itself. So, one more quick thing out of the spring game.
Sure.
OU and OSU both have transfer running backs who are very interesting. The kid from Tennessee for OU, who made a little move inside the 10 the other day. That was a thing of beauty. Gray. And then this kid from Utah State, Garen, Jalen Warren at OSU. Look out. Good player.
Second best back behind LD, huh? That's pretty good. That's not shocked, but that's interesting because of the moments that
you know, I mean, we all agree that the system is broken, and the freedom of transfers quite like this is probably not good for college football. It's not good for college football. And the lack of continuity on these rosters is maddening for the fan base, but I guess when it works out in your favor, you're like, okay, I'm cool with it. And I think Eric Gray and Jalen Warren have a chance to.
Yeah.
Well, at the very least, it really fortifies the depth in each backfield. And
that's right. And in the case of Gray, that's something Lincoln Riley could use because of Seth McGowan's situation, which he's tied up in that matter with Trajan Bridges, and now it's really in the hands of Norman Police, and we'll see where it goes and what happens. But if it's as bad as some fear, then they're going to need Gray, not just because he's good, but because it's another guy that be able to put in the 2 deep. So, all right, listen, folks, enjoy the draft. We'll write about it a little bit, perhaps. Keep reading and keep watching. For Bill, this is Garen. Have a good week.